but this is what's going on. That's amazing. That's so cool.
Right, we're
I
going to
love
go
it.
live in a minute.
Okie
All being
dokie.
well.
I'm going to take my glasses off
Here
and
we
then I'm
go.
going to look up at my camera. So I'm
That's
not
all
really going
right.
to be able to see you, but I want to look more like I'm looking at people or whatever. Or I could have my glasses on. I don't know.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Out of Nowhere. Well, what a guest we've got today. My golly, we're going to have some good fun. Talk about lots of different stuff today. Her name is Dana Louise. She's a wife and mother of two. She's lived in St. Paul's, Minnesota, USA, and has worn many hats, same as me. In the past, a finalist in Norwegian reality show Hat Vernage, season 9. She's a food truck owner, Reiki master, teacher, minister, TFI level practitioner, deaf dolls, public speaker, and more. Can we please welcome Dana to the show? Hello there.
Hi. Hi. How are you?
Very nice. And Mason's in the chat room. Good evening, Bob, and what a lovely lady, Dana.
Oh, thank you.
So
Um,
if you're going to comment on your right hand side, you'll be able to see who's in the chat room.
so
Tell
I
us
don't have my
about
glasses.
growing
Oh, go ahead.
up.
Go
I'll,
ahead. I'm sorry.
if you got any messages, if I got any questions, I'll relay them to you. Tell us about growing up in your environment.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I mean, that's amazing. Let's start from the start, right? I just have to preface all those things. I let all of that go. There was a voice that said to me, sell the food truck, la, 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 that I had to get on my path. So this is my hero's journey. I'm 63 years old, and I didn't want to write a book. I wanted to ignore this, and I've been in a state of denial for most of my life. And now I almost feel like I'm too late to the party because there's all these voices, which is great. I love that. I love that. It's confirmation for people, and for your audience, it's like maybe you've had an experience or maybe you haven't had experience, but lean in. We're going to talk about these things. And so for me, thank you for asking. I sometimes I get a little teary-eyed about it, but it started when I was in the crib, probably about 6 months old, and in the middle of the night, the window shade, just to make it quick, the window shade rolled up. There was this face in the window, and the next thing you know, there's all these beings over my crib, and then I black out. And what I want to say to people is, imagine even tonight being in your bed and something happens at your window, and there's someone with a mask or something that doesn't look normal in your window. And the next thing you know, there's other intruders in your room over your bed. I mean, like, how frightening. How frightening. And, I almost can't even imagine it happening to me today. I don't think I would take it as well as I did when I was a baby. I just took it. But in the moment, I knew what was in the window was not right. Because, you see your parents and you're starting to see the world and everything like that. This was not a part of that. And the fact that it came in the middle of the night was another clue. And your parents aren't there when you're 6 months old. They're pretty much carrying you around, or, there's a security kind of a thing. And there's none of that. So for me, when I was writing my book, I had to go back in time. I had to place myself there. How was I reacting? What was the thing? And I call it a defining moment, in that I became fully awakened because there's a threat to your, I don't know, innately, just as a being, I innately knew somehow. I think it's just nature. I'm in trouble. I mean, all creatures, must know if the wolf is coming in or something like that, you're in trouble. Something's going to happen. But there was nothing I could do because as an infant, first of all, I didn't scream out. I just kind of took it. I laid there when I first saw this because the shades rolled up. That's how I turned. That's how I woke up and turned to the window. And I noticed there was a
Right.
light going on in the room and there was a humming and a vibration. So I want to take a minute to discuss that. Every time I've been in the presence of an alien, not an angel, but an alien, there's a frequency vibration. And it's very like, it's like this frequency. I don't know how to describe it to you. It's like everything is shaking. It's a vibrational thing. It's like being on a roller coaster or something like that. And to me, I feel that is the environment that they have to have or live in. That's the frequency, as if, like a fish needs water. This is
Hmm.
the thing, the environment that they need. This is my guess. This is my guess because I've had other entities and there is that vibrational thing. Now, it could either be they need it, or is this the vibration they need, which is how they control us and subdue us through this frequency, which to me is amazing because it says to me how much frequency plays into everything in our world, everything in our world. So that was going on. And what happened was it continued. And this continued for a good 10 years of my life.
Okay.
And the problem is that when I got a little older, when I was starting to able to walk, I remember walking around with them through the house like I was a realtor. Like I was like showing them like, and this is the TV and here's the kitchen. But then, but this is all telepathic. We're not speaking. And anytime I've actually been with an alien, we're not speaking. It's all telepathy. And there's just so
Ah,
much to
yes.
say to all of you. It's just that telepathy is huge. And, we could get in this later or whatever, but I feel as if, because I want us to be whole, holy humans and get our divinity back, our powers back of who and how we should be. In that, I want I want to encourage you to find out, learn, go to whatever, try to pick up your telepathy thing. Because if they do come and it's more normal, we're going to need that skill. Now, recently, I was watching a show, probably some alien, whatever, blah, blah, blah show. And they were talking about, I think it was Angkor Wat or something like that. And it was the Hindu belief system. And they were talking about back in the day of like these gods. And they said that the gods, they were described as fire and air. Okay, so fire and air, but there were these gods and they were like living and doing these things on a 3D realm. But I took the fire and air to be a description of frequency, in that to be in the presence of the room with these beings, it was like this. Now, if you're thousands of years ago, like 3 or 4 thousands of years ago, how can you describe that? So there, I'm doing this, but it's like, that's the feeling you have. And I think these people were describing the same situation and feeling that I had being in the
Yeah.
presence of these other entities. It's a different realm. It's a different, like I said, fish out of water. They need this frequency in order to exist. Now, I would also say, because people are like, oh, they're going to come, la, la, la. And we are 3D dense, we humans. This is a very difficult situation to incorporate and be 3D. It's very low frequency, very dense. And I'm going to tell you, based on my experiences, that's all I can say is from my experiences. I would have a hard time. Well, I take that back because there are the Lizzies. But most entities would have to have this frequency that we talk about. You know, they talk about all these other aliens and stuff like that. I think that they need their realm. They need to be in their element in order to be
Yeah.
here. So I don't really think they're going to come. The Greys are not going to come and start working at UPS or, you know, slinging pizzas or anything like that, because it has to be a different frequency. And us humanoids, we're not good. You know, it's like, I can't breathe underwater. I mean, like, I could be underwater, but it wouldn't be much time
Yes.
before I would fail. So I think there's a kind of a impasse there. You know, it's not congruent. But I will say that there are entities that do and have and always have lived here.
Why?
So
Why do you, Dana? Why do you think they came to you?
because I'm weird. um, I'm weird. And that's the thing. I need to say this. I've been in denial my whole life. I say that I'm hiding in the cosmic. I never talked to my husband when I was dating him, like, oh, you know, I've met aliens and angels and ghosts and been through vortexes. You know, I always just wanted to be normal. I want to be a muggle because it seems easier to go through life. You don't bring these things up in normal conversation because,
Yeah.
especially if you're a person in business, you're seen as a kook the minute you open up your mouth. And so now you know, like I said, before COVID, it was like 2019. Okay, I'm going to just tell you. I was sitting there watching Harry Potter movie for like the 20th million time, you know, folding laundry, you know, just kind of like whatever, chilling out. And I got salty. I was like, Harry Potter, I think they were like down in some tunnels and something, and a bunch of stuff was going on. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm shit bigger than you, Harry. I'm like, I've encountered worse than you. I'm like, and oh, so then my voice, you know, my higher self or God, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. But anyway, it said, oh, you know, that's a lot of judgment. You're being very salty about Harry Potter. Oh, you think you've experienced more than Harry Potter? I'm like, well, I know I have. I'm like, this ain't nothing. I was like, oh, okay, well, fine. Put your money where your mouth is. You need to write your book, which people have been telling me for decades. And I'm like, what book? I was in such a like, what book about what? Like my in-laws? Maybe I should, what should I read about my in-laws? Like, that's a good story. But anyway, I'm like, what am I going to, and furthermore, I'm not a writer. And if I did write, it'd be very business, technological, blah, blah, blah. You know, like that's not me. But then I sat there, you know, this Harry Potter thing was going on. And it's like, Dana, the voice is like, you've gone through, you know, you've gone through some stuff. And I have actual physical receipts, you know, like government receipts. It's a long story. I mean, like, you've had witnesses your whole life. You're like saying to God, like, why all these witnesses? Why all these witnesses? This is the reason why, because you wouldn't believe it, Dana. And now, and I was sad that all these things were going on, but I never had any communication from like a grandmother or something, you know, because like my one grandmother, I knew she had the gift, you know, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call the gift, the spiritual gift. I knew she had that. And I'm like, oh man, if she had a diary, like I would love to read that. So at the same time, all of this is going on, I'm salty about Harry Potter. It's like, Dana, if you pass away, I mean, your children have experienced many things with you, but they don't, you know, because they're kids, they don't necessarily care about your stories. You probably said blah, 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 blah. I'm like, what did mom say? Blah, 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 blah. You know, they don't care because that's just the real deal. And they're not going to remember and they haven't experienced it. And maybe other people need to know. So you need to write your book. And I was like, oh my God. Because I had a career, I had a job. I was injured on the job. I call it smited. And people, when I got injured, I got up and these two women said, "You were smiling and laughing like this was horrible." And I said, "Yes, because I knew God was taking me out. God was smiting me to get me on my path." Then I was still in denial. I just, with all my might, just in denial about my path because I didn't want this. I didn't want this to be my path. So here I go forward, and it's like, it's 2019, sold the food truck, quit everything that I was doing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm going to get on my path. God, you put this on my plate. You dropped it in my lap since infancy. Okay, I'm gonna meet you halfway. I'm gonna do the work. And it took me 3 or 4 years to write this. And I thought it would take me like 6 months or something like that, because it's like, write what you know, right? Write what you know. Well, I'll tell you, to be fair, I sat there for 6 to 9 months on the first page. Like, how do I tell this story? This is impossible.
Exactly.
But I sat there and I did the work of making the appointment to sit my butt down and try to write it. And then my nephew, who's actually a writer and he's kind of renowned, but he writes horror stories and whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I said to him, "How do I do this? I'm just sitting here months and I can't write." And he just said, "Just start doing it. Just start to put it down." So I did, and then I'm like, "This is terrible," because people aren't going to be, "Hi, my name is Dana. I was a child, and the great alien started to visit me as a child, blah, 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 blah." I'm like, how boring. How boring is that? So then my son said, "Oh, you need to Tarantino it." I'm like, "What do you mean Tarantino it?" Like, I
Oh
knew,
my
but I
God.
didn't know. He's like, "Take something good, something saucy, and put it to the front. Make that your first paragraph. Then go back and explain who and how you are, a little bit, your background." So I did that. I started with my neighbor lady, and this was probably 1990 something, standing in the driveway, and I thought I was picking at a zit on the back of my neck. And you know how, like, you do things like you got to pull your underwear out or something, like, and you do these things and you don't say anything to anybody. So I was kind of doing that. So I was picking a zit, like, and then I'm like looking at the zit, like how you have a booger and you look at it or whatever. And I was like, "Oh shit, what?" Because it was a microchip. And thank God that
Oh,
my girlfriend is like super cool. Like, she was like one of the first people in this neighborhood that I actually started to talk to. Like, she was
so
weird.
cool.
I'm like, "Oh, I'm weird. You're weird. I'm weird." And this was before really cell phones and all that kind of stuff. So because I thought it was going to be pus, and it wasn't, excuse me, on my finger. And so I just stopped the whole conversation, and I'm like, "What?" And then both of us were like looking at it together. And I was like pushing on it, and it wasn't crumbling because I thought maybe it's dirt. It looked
Yeah.
black or something like that. Maybe it's dirt. And then she's like, "No, that's a microchip." And then she takes it off of my finger, puts it on her finger, and she's pressing it and trying to destroy it. And that's not happening. She's like, "Holy crap." Because, long story short, she told me, "Hey, you've been with aliens. You should probably do some healing work with implants and all this kind of stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." Like, I don't believe in it. I'm still in denial. But I went along with her and did some healing with some other woman, this other woman who supposedly
Yeah.
had the ability to do this. So here comes the zit. And as we're talking and looking at it, the microchip disintegrates into thin air. And then we both went, "Whoa." Anyway,
Whoa.
so that's like the beginning of my Tarantino story kind of a thing. But let's go back to the beginning. I'm going to tell you, I didn't remember all the times that the Greys visited me. But every time they visited me, I was altered. I was changed. I would have some supernatural powers. I could do things. I could manipulate electrical devices, and like just even walking by things. And this is kind of true to this day. would happen. And it was very magical. And then even my sister noticed it and kind of, at first she's like, that's just static electricity. And I'm like, really? Watch this. That's not static electricity. Anyway, so she hated that, but she was 7 years older than me. So it's kind of like, I was kind of happy because it was like the only thing I had over her was these abilities, but they would go away after like 2 or 3 days. So many times I would remember the Greys visiting, but many times I didn't. And then I would have the abilities and I was like, oh, like these guys, I didn't have a name for them. They must have been visiting me because I have the abilities again, and then, so when I was about 8, and I'm just going to show you this really quick. And I want to say for all
That's fine.
people, this is my dad's writing here. I covered over my last name because I do try to protect my family and, for a lot of
Yes.
reasons. So please understand, I did put a Post-it note over this with my middle name, which is Louise, and a little smiley face. So I don't want to hear it from people. But anyway, so when I was about 8 years old, because this is from, here we go, 1970.
Yeah.
And I kept this. The voice said to me, here I am, 8 years old. I'm like, you need to keep this. I'm like, why? Why do I care? A piece of paper, la la la. Anyway, so I did keep it. Thank you, God. So what this is, and it says special guest, presidential visit. I was 8 years old, taken out of, see, this is what I'm telling you. I have receipts. I was taken out of school and my parents drove to not Minneapolis, MSP, the main airport, but to the Rochester airport where the Mayo Clinic is and everything like that. We drove down there and my dad picks up this name tag for me and la la la. And we walk out to the tarmac and we're standing there. It's 1970 and up rolls Air Force One. Okay. So Air Force One rolls up. And out pops the president, Richard Nixon, and his wife, Pat. And Pat walks up to me. I'm pretty much the only kid there. My sister was with, but she's 7 years older. So I'm the littlest. And she hands me a red rose. Which when I was writing my book, I'm like, oh, because my whole life I'm like, man, oh, that was a nice thing. That was a nice thing that happened, blah, blah, blah. I didn't give any thought to it. Denial. Anyway, then I'm writing the book and it's like, Dana, that freaking red rose meant way more than you give it credit for. And then my voice said to me, you need to look up the presidential diary. And I have the papers here, but you can go to my website or some of my videos. Whatever. I'm like, presidential diaries. And they're like, yeah. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, Richard Nixon, presidential diaries. And I went back to that day. I even actually looked up the weather that day because I remember it being dismal and misty and gray and all this kind of stuff. And, I'm trying to back up and make sure that what I remember is factual. And yes, the weather was exactly how I remember it. And, in the diaries, there is the manifest of the plane because there's an actual person that writes everything down. Like, at 7:45, President Nixon called this person. It's very detailed. Yeah. But on the manifest for the flight, Pat Nixon is not listed. And I was like, that's crazy. She wasn't listed. She wasn't listed on the flights. So it's as if she didn't exist that day. And here she comes and hands me a red rose. And here I am 50 some odd years later writing about it, and connecting these dots. So these are the types of things that have happened to me, that make me realize, I would say realizing, that it's true, that it happened. And another kind of quick story is, before I wrote the book, it was before I wrote the book, I was injured. I was still injured. And I hadn't thought about writing the book yet. I hadn't done the Harry Potter thing. A girl who lived behind me, a little girl in the neighborhood who lived behind me back in the day, growing up when we were little bitties, she popped up on Facebook and I'm like, God provides for me. God always shows me things. He shows me everything. Anyway, so she popped up. I'm like, hey, Jennifer, like, let's get together. And so we got together, and she's just a very normal person, like American pie, just like, whatever, potatoes and, whatever. Anyway, normal person. And I know I'm not. But anyway, so we're sitting there and we meet. And all of a sudden, for whatever reason, I don't even know, I started to spout about that first encounter with the aliens. And just to back up, the whole room was vibrating. It was a hum. There was a humming and a vibration, and there was a light that was going around, searching in my room, and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know why I'm telling this person who I haven't seen in over 50 years about this story. And she reaches out to me, and she stops me and puts her hand on top of mine and squeezes it, and she goes, Dana, I remember that. And I'm like, what? And she goes, I remember the humming and the vibrations. And long story short, she didn't remember much of her childhood, but she remembered that. So that, to me, all these years later, was another great confirmation. And it heals my heart, because I didn't want to be in this place. I didn't want to write a book. I didn't want to be speaking out. But here I am. And I'm at a time in my life where, I'm not working and all this kind of stuff. So I can do these things. And
Yeah.
I know that there's other people that are having experiences. And I'm sure, I know that they're freaked out, number one. And you start to question, what is real? Did that really happen? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, like, it's very confusing. It's very upsetting. But I also enjoy that in today's world, we have this television, which people say tell lie visions or whatever, all these kinds of things. But there's a lot of disclosure going on. There's a lot of disclosure going on. And whether you want to understand it or not, like even the Marvel universe and all these kinds of things, that's disclosure. Those things I've encountered. Those things are part of our human divinity that has been taken away from us. And so I feel as if this is my hero's journey. Like each of us is called to have your hero's journey, or you could just be like, eat chips, watch TV, and like kick back and be in denial, and then your life is done. But if your life wants to have meaning or something, like, what is it? Why is your soul here? Why are you here? All these things. And I was in denial, but God called me out and has brought me to this place. So I'm like, yeah, and I would like to shepherd other people in who feel or who've had experiences and question themselves that you're not wrong. These things are going on. And the more that we get together, the more that we talk, the more that we bring our voices up, the more they can't deny it. And so that is a type of disclosure, because how can they put a cap on all of us saying, I've seen something happened to me. This is true. This is real. I know it is. I want you in your heart. Anybody who's watching the show, yes, stand firm, because we've been gaslit. It's just so much gaslighting going on. It just drives me crazy. But you are real, and your story is real, and this reality is real. We've been told a lie. We've been told a lie.
Hey, we have. Do you think we are chosen to receive messages from aliens?
Can you say that again? Because you bleeped out for a second. What was the first part?
Oh, sorry. Do you think we are chosen to get messages from aliens?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're trying to bust us. I kind of feel like, because there are the powers that be. I call them the powers that be. I don't know if it's okay for me to say certain words, because sometimes we get shut down for saying certain words. We get, shadow banned. I'm just going to say there are two different kind of species that are here that are in control. And, and there's these other groups that are trying to come forward. Oh, see, now I'm going to clear. They're coming forward Did I explain that to your audience? I am an energy worker, and sometimes when I do a lot of disclosing things that are really close to the truth, it bubbles up and I burp. It's
Yes.
not that I'm drinking soda, but anyway, or cucumbers. But anyway, so that's a clearing for me because it's how I can stay sane and everything. Anyway, so I feel like there are certain other because they can't control everybody, right? All these who's here and is in power, they can't control everyone. So I feel like these other factors, and a lot of them more angelic, are trying to bust the system so that we as humans can be whole, holy humans, part of our divinity. We had these powers, these things that I was given by seeing these aliens and stuff like that. That's what everybody had, I believe, once upon a time. And if you want to believe like the Christian story about Jesus, you know, whatever judgment, this or that, I think it's a story at least to say that he would say, as I do, you can do also. And once we claim who we are in our divinity, they will no longer have power over us. They can't use us. They can't enslave us. They can't do the nasty things that they do to us because we're all going to stand up and we'll have our powers. Right now, we're so asleep. We're asleep, and we're starting to wake up. And the more everybody stands up and says their truth and stand in it, because when I was little and growing up, and the reason why I didn't talk for so many years is because, I'd be so persecuted. And I think now, today, I mean, can you imagine, like in the 1800s, and these things are going on, you'd have, like, how do you talk to anybody? But now we have television and everything, and the internet, we're very connected. So this, I feel, is a help. It's a help and a hope for us and humanity. And we need to be mindful of it. And if you want to go on an adventure, be on the adventure of your own life and start speaking up and disclosing and saying, yeah, this is happening. That was real. That is true. You know what I mean? What a great adventure. Yeah, it's crazy. It's weird.
Tell, tell us about the phone call you got about your dad.
Yeah. So I wrote the book and, did the book. And then I believe it's because I started doing, podcasts. I'm like, seriously, I don't like being videotaped and all this kind of stuff. Like, that's not my jam. But anyway, so I did a talk for MUFON. So the book came out in like April. And then I did the talk for MUFON, who they super vetted me. They're like, we don't know if you're crazy, Nazi, something. I'm like, okay, I am not, which is good. That's fine. But anyway, so I think I did the talk about October, November, or something like that. And it was like February. I get a phone call from a guy. Now, number one, I don't pick up my phone. Because, if you start picking, to a number that I don't know, because if you start picking up your phone, you're just going to get a bunch of spam, then they're like, they know you're a live line and there's a person, you just get all the spam calls. So I don't. Actually, my voicemail, which I don't listen to anyway, says, hi, I'm not picking up the phone if I don't know your number. If you're a real human, call me back because spam doesn't call back twice, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. Well, anyway, I was waiting for a healthcare call. So I had called the doctor and I was waiting for a call. So here comes this phone call and I'm like, oh, it must be the doctor. So I answered it, which is completely rare.
Oh.
But see how God always takes care of me. God always takes care of me. So I answered the call and he's like, hey, don't hang up right away. He's panicked. Don't hang up. I'm like, oh, okay. And he goes, are you Dana? And I'm like, yeah. Do you know Donald? And I'm like, yeah. Now I got scared. I'm like, what do you want? Like, what? And he goes, oh, so here's where, and I say to on other podcasts, baloney instead of saying BS, because like a lot of people don't like swearing. I love to swear. But anyway, so I'm, kind of a sailor in that way. So I'll just say bologna sandwich. So I'm like, what? And he goes, I bought a desk for 30 years ago and I was just cleaning it out. And behind one of the drawers was this file. I'll show you the file. Anyway, which is hilarious. Okay, so see this file. All right,
Yeah.
so I am filming right now in one of my son's rooms, and I'm sorry, but especially with boys or whatever, even your own dresser drawer or desk. I mean, that's a felt factory. Like there's felt, there's dust, and it coagulates and it grows and it spawns and it gets thick, right? If something has been kept at the back of this desk for 30 years, it would be not clean like that, right? So I
Exactly.
knew he was, yeah, I knew he was full of bologna sandwich. And other people were like, didn't you bust him on him? Like, no, I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear the story. Like, tell me more about all your lies. I thought it was hilarious. Like, I know, but then I know that he knows that I know that he knows that I know that he knows and whatever. So he's like, okay, I got this folder that I found about your dad. Would you like it? And I'm like, sure, of course. And the thing of it is, sidebar, months leading it, my dad has been passed since 2010. And this just happened like last year or something like that. And I was like praying kind of a thing like, with all the things in the book and everything, my dad and all the politics, it's a long story. But there was like, I don't know if you're familiar with Hubert Humphrey, who was a Politico,
Yeah.
ran for president back in the day. I'm like, God, I wish, because my dad was a Republican, Hubert Humphrey was Democrat, but somehow they were tied together. Anyway, I'm like, I wish I had the pictures back in the day from my dad with Hubert Humphrey. Well, lo and behold, here comes this file. So this man says to me, he had very specific times that I could meet him, which is weird, right? And I'm like, I'm just loving this because I know it's full of bologna. It's a big bologna sandwich with mustard, with schmear, and a little bit of lettuce. But anyway, so I'm loving it. And I go and I meet him. Long story short, which was great. He hands me this file, bologna sandwich. But inside of it were classified papers confirming to me, because even at my dad's funeral, okay, so this guy goes, oh, I wish I met your dad. I wish I worked with your dad. So, okay, wait a minute, bud. You just told me you bought this desk, you found this file, and now you're telling me an intimate thing of that you wish you worked with my dad and you knew my dad. And my dad was an electrical engineer. And I'm like, well, what did you do? And he goes, oh, I was in IT. And I'm like, you don't, like, IT people are very specific, and the dates he had from where he bought the desk, like nothing was adding up. It was such a bologna sandwich. It was delicious and juicy. So, I'm just listening to this whole thing and I'm like, but why would you want to work with my dad? At my dad's funeral, a dude walked up to my sister and myself and said, I don't know why they fired your dad. My dad said he quit, and that's a whole nother long story that we don't have time for. But anyway, which gets into actually some other nefarious stuff, like what's that place? Montauk, blah blah blah. Anyway, and he goes, your dad was a genius. He transformed whatever the supercomputer. So in the file, not only classified papers about my dad talking to NASA, going to the places where they would have been reverse engineering, the Roswell stuff, but here was this picture. And I went back to my MUFON guys because they're a bunch of old farts, old stogies who, bunch of nerds, and they know stuff. I'm like, hey, what is this picture about? Why was this in the file? I'm like, oh, that's the supercomputer. I'm like, ha! So at my dad's funeral, when this man said, I don't know why they fired your dad, he transformed a supercomputer, here in this file, how many years later, 15 years later, blah, blah, blah. But I looked at my sister and I said to her, because I've always known this, I'm like, I was traded for alien technology. Do you understand that? I was exposed and used and traded for alien technology. And she was always like, I mean, like she wanted to say I'm full of baloney, but she knew and saw who and how I was growing up. So she knew that I wasn't telling a lie. And here was coming more and more proof of receipts that what I was saying was the truth. And this is also plays into me growing up of like, why God, why all these witnesses, why all these things? And I go back to say, because God said to me, You wouldn't even believe it, Dana. And oh, yeah, I know. You wouldn't believe it if you didn't have witnesses. And now I have physical proof, which says to me, it's not about me. What I'm saying is, out there are agents. This man had to be an agent from some agency, one of the three-letter alphabets, CIA, whatever the heck.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm sure he heard me talking to MUFON or something. There was going on in the background, and they're like, we need to help her. So there are powers that be that are out there that wants these stories to come out to, again, help and support other people that have witnessed things. This just says to me, here's physical proof, and other people who are working in the shadows, who probably worked for the government, because it's a long story. You'd have to read the book. I can't even, jeez, and it's just mind blowing. Anyway, they want the story out there. So I know they're supporting me. And I'm sure just for your audience to understand, the thing is, this is a passion. I don't get paid, to be on your show. I probably get $2 for my book on Amazon. I probably get $1.65 for this Barnes and Noble. So I don't make any money. And what I'm trying to say, and there are powers that come after us and they attack us and they try to make our lives difficult and all these kinds of things, and people get shut down, and it can be very ugly, very ugly. But what they don't know is who and how I am and who supports me and who's behind me, because I have a whole angelic realm. And I have people in the shadow government. I am protected. I am safe and secure, so that I can come out and say these things, and I'm jocular and I giggle and all these kinds of things because I have been to hell. I've been in the mud. This isn't me. This isn't a false thing. My joy and everything. It's my frequency and my vibration, because I'm trying to transmute the higher levels of frequency to all of us, because that's how we overcome these negative, low, reptilian energies, these kinds of things. So, and I'm just damn happy to be alive, because I've had so many experiences where I thought I was going to die. And I'm just going to say, if, people who've experienced the threat of death or cancer or something like that, once they get to the other side of that, where their life is renewed again, you do come from a place of joy, and so that's where I come from. I'm almost going to cry, because I've been there and I've been threatened and I've been in the depths of the darkness. And so I choose, laughter is the best medicine, as they say. And please
I
always
think
try
it
to
is as
remember
well.
that. Yeah.
Tell us about, I know we briefly talked before the show about what you saw in the forest with your husband.
That guy. Oh, okay. Oh my God, I have so many cryptid stories. But anyway, so before the show, I don't know, we were talking and about things in England and cryptoids and
Yes.
all that kind of stuff. And so we went camping, and we only did it one time. And it's in Taylor's Falls, Minnesota, which is on the Wisconsin border. And we rolled up. It was dark. We were kind of late, and there was a picnic table at our campsite. And my younger son, who was born on 11/11, I'm going to tell you, both of my children are amazing, amazing. And anyway, so there was this creature crouching. It was the size of a human, crouching on top of this picnic table, or a little bit smaller, skinny, kind of scary looking. And he saw it first, like he saw it, and the thing was like, like. How, like, I don't know, like little animals are like, oh, you don't see me, whatever. And then he's like, Mom. And I looked and I saw it, and then it scurried away, and we were both like, wow, that was so cool, la la la. And like, I think a lot of people are like, no, we're not camping, we're going back. Anyway, I mean, that would be the natural reaction, but in our world, we're like, hey, you want a beer? Come on over. We're going to make some brats. I know you're a cryptid, but we got to cheer for you. It might be uncomfortable, but anyway. So then I went to this MUFON meeting, I know some people might have some judgment about it, but I've only had good experiences. Anyway, so at one meeting, they were talking about this cryptoid that is from that specific spot. And it
Oh,
shows up there and then some other place in Wisconsin, and only those two places. And I have a feeling that there's probably energetic tunnel, a wormhole, and I almost got sucked up in a wormhole. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, so I'm sure it goes back and forth and moves back and forth between these two areas. So it was kind of very confirming of what we saw, because I'm like, oh yeah. And I can't, I think they call it, I think they might call it Wolfman. I'm not quite sure, but it was
hmm.
something like Wolfman or something like that, which is something I think that you experienced or something near your area. And we were talking earlier, because there's a part of like, what are these things? I always question everything, like, because I don't believe in a lot of stuff like crop circles. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm gonna burp. Anyway, so it's kind of like are these organic to the planet like Bigfoot, or were these made by man? Yep, here it comes. Or was it made by man from experiences or experiments gone wrong? You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I will just preface everything by saying I have more questions than answers. All I have is my experiences. That's the only thing that I can bring are my experiences. And after writing the book, more memories open, more memories open. So I have more questions, and it's just for me been an amazing trip. But who knows about what that being is or was or are, but people are reporting those as well, these strange beings around the planet, right? So I mean, how amazing. And I do write about that in my book of like, like how okay, like there's mites. Every one of us as a human, we have mites that live on our skin. It's
Yes.
disgusting and we're not very aware of it. And back in the Renaissance days, nobody knew about germs or washing your hands or all these kinds of things. So that's a level of benighted. Us humans are benighted. We have less than 1% sight, less than 1% hearing. We are very shut down. We do not, I mean, like legitimately, scientifically, you can Google it. Like if we were able to see this full spectrum of light, our planet, what we live in, would look very, very different. And every species has a different type of vision, for themselves that suit their daily lives and everything like that. And ours, I think, has been shut down and benighted so that to help us so that we can stay sane,
Yeah.
but but what I'm trying to say is that there are multi levels of living, and we don't even know. We know less than one percentage of it. I'm going to say I'm sitting in a house and there are worms under my house, and those worms don't know about a computer or french fries or going to a job, but that worm is still real and it still has its existence. The fact that it doesn't know about us doesn't make them wrong. So if you go and you look at this world and this planet, and if you could just say that maybe for a minute we're just as benighted, we're just as dumb as a worm. We are earthworms. um that kind of is like when you just like break open the doors to like through the eyes of a child, just have that wonderment of the possibilities.
Oh, yes.
Just break open the
Tell you what,
possibilities.
um, somewhere in time, do you recall past life sometimes?
Well, I didn't, but I went to past life regression. That my neighbor down the end of the block, she's like this English teacher, and I was having a malady in my body. I was having some anxiety and some physical manifestations, like not feeling good. And she goes, "Oh, I'll bet you it's a past life. Like a lot of these things are past life." So the guy his name was Carl Schlotterbeck, and he wrote a number of books of past life regression. Carl Schlotterbeck, So he just lives a couple miles north of me. I had no idea. Long story. Anyway, he did a regression to me, and because I didn't believe in it. I'll sign up for anything. Like, let's go for the journey. Let's go have some fun. Woo! Like, we don't
Yeah.
know. I'm like, I don't believe in it. And then I experienced it. And yeah, so I wrote that in my book as this one particular past life thing where I witnessed this man being shot by soldiers. I think he was back in the day, like he wasn't a pirate, but it was on the seas. And long story short, anyway, so the thing is, when this man died at the firing range, Carl had me go forward to this man who is me. And he says, now lift him up to heaven. And I'm during this regression, I am like, you're asleep, it's
Right.
hypnotic, but I could feel these huge tears rolling down my face. And he's dead, but he's still kind of there or whatever like that. And I'm crying and I'm like, oh my God, he thinks I'm an angel. He sees me as an angel. He doesn't know that I am him and he is me. And so the weird thing about that is, like, we can't be in judgment of some of these things that happen to us. Like, an entity might come towards you and you might think it's demonic, but maybe it's testing you of what strength you have. I'm like, there's just so much judgment we have. And, your audience, I'm sure, are, less of that. They're being open-minded because that's why they're listening to you and listening to me, because they are open-minded.
Yeah.
But as we all know, there's just so much judgment. And the more we can get into erasing our filters of judgment, of like, we're all brought up, like, we have certain experiences. You might grew up in the woods, or you grew up in a city. So those are a filter. Those are our backgrounds. And that's the place we come from. But the more we can just strip those things away, strip right down to what is true, it's amazing. And really, really, I think what's coming out now is the history of humanity. I just stumbled upon recently something called the London hammer, or the hammer of London, or it's the hammer of England, or the English hammer, something like that. But this hammer is over 150 million years ago. And they're kind of like, la, 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 humans, blah, 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 tools. But this is an actual scientific hammer from 150 million years ago. I think there have been many, many different societies on this planet, and then they get erased, and we don't even know about each other. We still kind of know about Egypt and stuff, but I think so much of history, I think maybe somebody knows, but this planet, it has to be here how many billions and billions upon billions. Just, I can't even wrap my head around the billions and billions. It can possibly be, they're saying they found a layer in the rock formations that 200 million years ago, there was a highly technological civilization, like what we would think is futuristic, what we might think of as alien. 200 million years ago, gone. I mean, and to me, I'm like, yeah, that could happen to us too. You never know. And then it plays out again, and it plays out again. And oh my God. So I think there's just more magic. And when you open up to these things, like if you think your life is small or boring, that is the gaslighting that's been done to you, because there's just so much more to you and your life and to the story and to this planet. And it's just an adventure. It's just amazing. And the more we open up to it, the more they can't keep putting the lid on it. Like, boop, boop. They can't enclose us anymore. And I'm so excited for that. I knew in my heart, there's part of me as a child, I'm like, I told my sister, these are the end times. This is biblical. I'm like 5 telling her this. She's like, oh, every civilization thinks that. I'm like, no, this is true. So there was a part of me that's like, I'm never going to be able to tell my story. This is never going to happen. My world is way too crazy. No one will accept me, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, I was gaslighting myself, telling myself as a child this story. There was something in my
Mm.
heart. There was the voice that said, no, it's going to happen. The truth is going to come out. You will be able to speak. And so I thank you so much for having me on your show and your audience for listening to me. I know I say a lot, but yeah, thank you for your time. And it means a lot to
Hey,
me.
that no problem at all. We'll talk again in the
Oh, thank
future.
you.
No
Thank,
problem.
but thank you all to
Where
having
can
an
people
open heart. Go ahead.
people get your book?
It's on Amazon.com. My website, which is kind of like the best place to kind of find a lot of it, is DanaLouise.com. Dana Louise. And behind me is my book. So, I mean, I didn't know what to call it. Like, how do you say everything that's happened to me? So, like, this is going to sound weird. And that's me in Norway. And that I did not ever plan to be on a reality show in Norway. Like, that was not my plan. It happened. That's kind of how my whole life is.
That
But anyway, this is me in
that's
Norway.
how things happen.
Yeah, so it's this gonna, it's not going to. This is gonna sound weird.
Donna,
And you
Donna.
should be able to get it on Amazon. And then my good friend, I have a friend, Miles, who lives in Devices, England. And there's a little bookstore there that had my book. Maybe they're all sold. But anyway, so there is one bookstore in England where my book is at, but otherwise Amazon. And I would appreciate it. And if anybody, so the thing of it is, it's not about, I'm not going to make money, but that kind of, whatever. But it's to me, also, you should know at the end of the book, I wasn't going to put any energy exercises. And then God, sat me down. And it's so funny because there is a Monty Python reference. It's kind of hilarious because I'm like, and now for
Right.
something completely different. And I'm like, the lodge. And for a lot of you that know, that is funny. Anyway, so I did do some energy exercises, some things that to shock you in how divine you are and the powers that you do have. And they're in the back of the book. It's free. It's stuff that I learned. Some of it I paid money for and sat my
Yeah.
butt at a seminar forever. But you can go and do these things. You can read it in my book because God said this is your one time to talk to people. And if you want them to know their energy and their divinity, you have to give it to them. So I'm like, okay, fine. So it's in the book, DanaLouise.com. Reach out to me if you've had an experience or something like that. This is why we're here. We all need to connect. And Bob, thank you for holding space. Thank you for holding space for all of us who
Thank
have
you.
our voices. So I appreciate it so much.
Everybody in the chat room, everybody in the chat room saying, brilliant this, lovely guest, lovely
Oh, thank
lady.
you.
They're all saying,
Thank
what a
you.
lovely energy this lady has.
Oh, thank you. And one day I would like to come back. I've been to England twice, but I want to bring my sons there. I mean, it's just an amazing place. I love it. And I need to
Yeah.
get to Scotland for a lot of reasons. But anyway, so hopefully maybe one day I can come and visit you and give you a hug because that would be amazing. Because I had this
Anytime.
friend Miles and I didn't. And then the next thing you know, we were talking like you and me. And the next thing you know, I met him. So magic and marvels can happen. And if you think you're sad, just be kind to someone, do something nice, spread your kindness and find your magic.
That's right.
Yeah. So
That's the way
anyway,
to do it.
yeah.
Well, thank you again. It's been
Thank you.
absolutely wonderful. My guest next Wednesday is John Keeling. He's from the UK. He's got a book out about UFOs. He hasn't been out long, his books anyway. Been trying to get him on for quite a while. So he's next Wednesday, the 21st of May at 7 p.m. in the UK, 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 p.m. in Pacific. Anyway, you take care. Have a
Cheers
lovely
to all.
weekend.
You too. Thank you all.
Thank you. I'll just finish the
Oh.
show. Thank you again.